Hello everyone and welcome back to my opening trap series, and today's episode I'm going to teach you all about the flagship trap. So, it comes after pawn to e4 by white, and black responds with pawn up to e5. We now go knight to f3 here, attacking the pawn. Black will defend it with knight to c6, and now we go a little bit more offbeat with pawn up to c3. This is the Ponziani opening, and the idea of it is pretty simple. We are supporting a pawn up to d4 push and trying to establish a very big center of pawns. However, it is not objectively best because black can either strike back immediately with pawn up to d5 or knight to f6. This is the Janish counterattack, and the idea of it is pretty simple. Black is attacking the pawn and simply asking us how are we going to defend it, because the very natural knight to c3 is now blocked, and the solution to that problem is we're not going to defend it. We're instead going to play pawn up to d4, striking in the center immediately, and black's best option here is to capture on e4 with the knight. I will get more into this in just a moment. However, black's most common option is to capture on d4 with the pawn, and if they do this, then my recommendation to you is to first push the pawn up to e5, because that way it is not lost. The knight here that is attacked now must move. Knight to d5 is the best square, and I'm going to recommend the gambit line here with bishop to c4. You are attacking the knight, and after it moves, you now back your bishop up to b3. If black does not capture on c3, then you will simply capture them, and if they do end up capturing, then after you capture back with the knight, you are down a pawn here. However, the engine is giving about equal because you have full compensation. Black's position is pretty cramped. This bishop is fantastic, and I think you have great chances here, so that is what I would recommend if they capture on d4 here. However, if they capture on e4 with the knight, you are now going to have a world of fun. You are not going to capture on e5, but instead push up to d5 with the pawn, attacking the knight, and pretty much everyone here will back the knight up, most likely to e7. They can also try knight back to b8, but that is not very ambitious and just kind of sad, if I'm completely honest. Black's best option here objectively is actually bishop to c5, the Vukovic gambit, and the engine's going to have kind of a hard attack analyzing this, but essentially what black is doing here is they are sacrificing the knight while counterattacking on f2 with the bishop and the knight. This is a very fun line. The key to kind of refuting this is after you capture on c6 to remember this move queen up to d5. Like if they capture on f2 with the knight, queen up to d5 now, you are attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn, now threatening a fork with captures on b7 and forking the rook and the bishop in the corner. You can see the engine is all over the place with this, and if they capture the rook in the corner, you can simply capture the bishop. Your queen will then loop back to b1 and capture the knight, and you are simply completely winning here. You have a great position. If instead they try to capture on f2 with the bishop, then now you move your king up to e2, and I know it looks awkward, but after something like bishop back to b6 and queen up to d5, you are still up material here. You once again have threats of capturing on b7 and capturing on e5 here. This is a very wild position, and I can guarantee you are going to have a lot of fun playing it if you do get it, but like I mentioned, most people here do just back up the knight to e7, at which point you capture on e5. Now, the main line here is knight to g6. This is black's best option. However, the most common move here by far, and when I say by far, I mean it occurs in over 50% of games here, is pawn to d6. However, it is completely losing. You can see the eval bar shot up. It's now +5 because we do not move the knight away. We instead play bishop to b5 check, and all the weak squares that the king has to be protected from are all covered from the bishop and the knight, and black is simply out of options here. If they block with the bishop on d7, then we can simply capture. They're forced to capture with the queen. We capture back. We're just completely winning here. We're up a lot of material. Their best option is c6. You want to capture with the pawn. They cannot capture back with the capture the knight in the center here, because now you capture on b7 with check, and you are simply going to make a queen on the next move here. Not so much say, you're up 12 points of material. They can also try to capture back with the pawn, which is probably their best option, at which point you want to capture with the knight. If they capture, the knight simply capture on c6. You get a very nice triple fork here, a trork, I think the appropriate name is. After they block, you can take the rook, but you lose the bishop. Instead, capturing the knight in the center is the best move. You're completely winning here. But their best, most resilient option is queen to b6 after we capture the pawn. We now back the knight up to d4 to simultaneously give a check as well as protect the bishop with the knight. And after they block, this trade will happen. You are only up 1 point of material here. However, your position is so positionally dominating, and what I mean by that is black has such a horrible position. You can simply castle here, which is the best move, and you are going to simply attack this king, and you are completely winning in this position. So that is the extremely likely pawn up to d6 trap. However, there is actually more venom to this opening. If they do not fall into that trap, but instead play knight to g6, the best option here, then the best move objectively, according to the engine, is to capture on g6. But after they capture back, there's just not that much fun in this position. I cannot, with a happy heart, recommend this to you. Instead, I'm going to recommend the very fun line, that being bishop to d3 here. Immediately attacking the knight in the center, and if they capture on e5, you can simply capture here. Black is slightly better here, but I would be hard pressed to actually tell you exactly why that is. And after something like bishop to c5 and castles, I find it very hard to say you have a bad position here. But with this move, bishop to d3, there is an extremely venomous trap that over 1,000 people have fallen for. They might try here, knight takes on f2. This is a very logical move, because what they're seeing is that if we capture back, which looks like the best move because our queen and rook are getting forked here, then now they can simply capture on e5. Now we are down a pawn here, our king is on f2 and cannot castle, and black is actually just winning here. And because that, they might try knight takes on f2, but here we win with a ridiculous move, bishop takes on g6. That should make you go, wow. That move completely sacrifices the queen, but if they capture it, then now you are completely winning. First, if they do not try that, they can also try to capture back the bishop, which is their best move, but now we can simply safely capture back on f2. We are up an entire piece here, and we are completely winning, and because black has such a bad position, after something like bishop to c5 check, you can even afford to go bishop to e3, and your king can run all the way up to e3, but black simply has no way to properly punish you here, and you are up a piece and completely winning. But if they do end up capturing your queen, then be prepared to unleash a devastating move. You capture on f7 with the bishop, the king must walk up to e7, you now give a check with this bishop, bishop to g5 check, also skewering the queen, and after they run to d6, you can capture, which is also winning, but why do that when you can have a lot more fun? You go knight to c4 check here. Checking the king, it must run all the way up to c5, and now you have a very nice move, knight b to a3. And the idea of this move is that you are now protecting the knight, and you also sacrifice the bishop. Black is up 9 points of material here, equal to being up an entire queen, but their king is wild on c5, and pawn up to b4 here is checkmate. You can look at this as checkmate. The king cannot run anywhere. That is very beautiful. If instead they prevent that with, let's say, a5, then now you can safely capture the queen. You are up an entire piece here. This knight is also trapped, and you are completely winning with a fantastic trap, a fantastic game, and you should be very happy with yourself. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. Comment below if you want more of these, and I will see you next time. Have an absolutely fantastic